Indonesia. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation would like to extend its warm thanks to the President of the United Nations Final Conference on the Arms Trade Treaty, Ambassador Walcott, for all his efforts to bring closer the views of member states despite their differences and contradictions, with a view to reaching a draft text of the Arms Trade Treaty, an acceptable text that can enjoy consensus. All of us here recognize that his mission was never an easy one, due to the substantial, deep differences in the positions of member states, and also because of the conflicting political interests among these countries. My delegation would like to emphasize its full support for the global trend towards building an international community free from the use and the threat of use of force, an international community characterized by the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, which are based on justice, equality, and peace. We wish to confirm our readiness to participate in any international effort seeking in good faith to achieve that aspired goal. As mentioned by the President of the conference, we have worked for years, like the other member states. We have worked to reach a good treaty and not to get a treaty that is inapplicable and will be used exclusively and surely only as a means of bringing future pressures to bear on others, as happened in the case of other important instruments. We are not against the treaty, and we consider it, if completed as required by consensus, to be a major gain for the international community. We are in need of a good treaty which we will not regret later and which will not be used for political exploitation by some states against others. My country, Syria, cannot be the side obstructing a treaty we all aspire to. But those who impeded a fair and balanced treaty are those who refuse to pay attention to the concerns and worries of a large segment of the member states. We in Syria, more than others, are interested in reaching and adopting a good and viable treaty that paves the way for a new era of dealing with issues of illicit arms trade, instead of the state of immoral chaos prevailing currently in this area. This anarchy lays its shadows on international peace and security and rides roughshod over the concerns of victims and the disadvantaged in favor of the interests of users and crises dealers and warmongers. Mr. President, my country is among the member states that have sought always to legalize and codify arms trade. Due to the risks posed by the illegal trade of weapons on international peace and security. A case in point is what my country is currently witnessing due to this bloody trade that supports terrorism and its perpetrators against Syria and against its people indiscriminately. Certain countries, among the countries that strongly supported the draft treaty, before us are fully engaged in supplying terrorist groups in my country, Syria, with all kinds of lethal weapons that claim the lives of thousands of civilians and destroy the infrastructure of the country. This in itself explains the objection those states showed to the inclusion of a paragraph that bans supplying unauthorized non-state actors with weapons. This is a political hypocrisy and a clear-cut indication that the draft treaty before us is selective and thus cannot enjoy consensus. Mr. President, my delegation has worked hard to reach a consensual treaty that safeguards the rights of all states, be they exploiting or importing. We have tried to bring closer different perspectives through holding several meetings attended by a number of like-minded delegations, as well as by meeting with the President of the conference more than once. We presented to him a number of essential points that we wanted to be included in the text of the treaty before us, in order to make it balanced and to meet the aspirations of all member states. Regrettably, this effort, like many other parallel efforts undertaken by other delegations interested in the adoption of a compromise text, had gone with the wind because of the insistence of some to cover the interests of arms producers at the expense of the interests, concerns and security of a wide range of countries. Accordingly, my delegation finds itself compelled, having exhausted all methods of persuasion and dialogue, to vote against the draft treaty text attached to the draft resolution contained in document A/67/L58 for the following reasons. First, the treaty has ignored the proposals by a number of states, including Syria, to include a reference in the text to foreign occupation and the inalienable right of people under foreign occupation to self-determination. As you well know, Israel still occupies Arab land in the Syrian Golan, Palestine, and South Lebanon. Second, the draft treaty does not contain a clear-cut paragraph referring to the categorical prohibition of the supply of arms to unauthorized non-state terrorist elements and groups. This omission of the serious issue which my country is suffering from currently due to the fact that some countries are supplying terrorist groups with weapons cannot be accepted by my country. This is mainly due to the shameful ignoring by member states to the provisions of the Charter and principles of international law, by ignoring and involvement and complicity of Arab regional and Western authorities in illegal arms smuggling to Syria in order to undermine any hope for a peaceful political solution to the Syrian crisis in accordance with Security Council Resolutions 2042 and 2043. Third, the draft treaty ignored introducing a special section on definitions to address some ambiguities related to concepts and arms stated in the text of the treaty, without clarifying the meanings of the definitions and terminology. Those who approve the draft treaty resemble the person who is asked to swim without knowing how to float. Fourth, the draft treaty ignored the reference to a very important topic, that is, the crime of aggression defined and internationally agreed upon as provided for in GA Resolution 3314 of 1974. Fifth, selectivity in arms control and transparency does not represent a balanced and comprehensive starting point. This would hamper reaching of international community's commitment to disarmament in a practical, transparent, and impartial manner. Sixth, the draft treaty in its current form constitutes interference in the powers of the Security Council. We do not like this to be precedent in international work before completing the reform of the Security Council. Seventh, the treaty in its current form is not consensual, as it has not taken into consideration the positions and opinions of many nations, including mine. Mr. President, the proposed draft resolution is incomplete and unbalanced. It covers the interests of a certain category of states at the expense of another set of states. My delegation believes that it would be important to allow for action and to follow up negotiations in earnest on an arms trade treaty that ensures balance, equality, and justice among member states. A treaty that strives to maintain international peace and security rather than abusing one way or another the security and peace of many member states and ignoring their fundamental national interests. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.